Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Dirty Side of the Grid podcast where we've turned up late to qualifying, but it didn't even matter in the end because the Red Bulls retired, so we inherited all their positions anyway. I'm Mohammed and I'm joined by Yusuf, and this is episode 18 where we're finally back with what's going to be a new season on here as well as a new season of F1 as we're doing the first race review of the season. Bahrain, or as like the Sky Sports commentators love to call it, Bahrain. So we're here. I can't even explain how much that annoys me, but I'm sure we'll get into that as well as other stuff. How did you find the first race then?
Summarize it. Just summarize.
No, you can't summarize it without doing the 60-second summary.
No, that would be in the end. We can do it now. We can do it in the end.
No, we do it at the start. Yeah, it's always at the start.
Okay.
Okay, no, you can get some general thoughts. Give it some general thoughts first.
No, I might as well do it now.
You want that? Okay, alright, we'll go straight into it.
We'll go straight
in with the 60-second summary, the first of the season.
Wait, you have to give me a second just to kind of calibrate.
No, I don't. That's not how this works. Alright, 3, 2, 1, go.
McLaren was shocking in qualifying. Daniel Ricciardo out in Q1, which, like, seriously, man, like, everyone hyped him up, and then he's out. Haas actually have, like, very, very good performance. Mercedes are terrible. Red Bull and Ferrari are up for it at the front. Surprisingly, Alfa Romeo have, like, very, very good pace. This is all based on, like, qualifying. The race was, like, the start was good. The race was kind of boring. The cars follow a lot better than they used to. Like, we saw the battle with Verstappen and, what's his name? Like, the closest I'd seen to that was Lewis and Rosberg. And then we've got Bottas in P6, surprising, Magnus in P5. 2 Red Bull retires at the end. And Lewis got a podium, which is shocking. And George got P4. What's surprising is everyone hyped up George, but then Lewis basically had better pace overall. But interesting is George gave Lewis a tow throughout qualifying. So, are we done?
Oh my... 59.86.
I think I covered everything.
Wow. I'm just impressed how you stopped exactly on time.
Because I can see you going to press the button, that's why.
It's not magic. You could see it and there are things.
No, it's not magic, is it?
Was I actually going to go pause it at 60? I
think I did well in covering everything. Like
that
big talking about.
That was.
I didn't talk about McLaren in the race, but.
Yeah, but
you didn't
there's better things to talk about. All right.
But I think for summarize like a one or two, like maximum 3-word kind of summary for I think kind of encompasses the race. I think that would be kind of a good.
I want to say no more domination. Partly.
Proof of concept. I think that covers.
Okay, I see.
Proof of concept. Because that was the whole like thing for today is proving that can this new concept of F1 using ground effect and stuff work or not. That was the very interesting thing because all the cars actually suffered from like bouncing and stuff because of the ground effect. Because the more ground effect you apply, the more bouncing you get. The less you apply, the slower you are. So it's kind of a balancing act of that. But it's interesting. I think the following definitely was a lot better. Like the closest was Lewis Rosberg, but that was in the same car. Whereas this one is a different car. You saw as well like very close performance. Midfield was very close as well. Surprisingly, the midfield was very, very close. Like I'm talking from after Bottas.
Yeah.
Say from like P7 or no P8 at the time down to kind of like P15. That was very close. So I think that made kind of an interesting race.
There was definitely like a difference in the order, and I was surprised because part of me has been thinking that like whatever team it is that gets it will run away with it. Obviously, everyone throughout, maybe not 2014 when everyone expected it, but 15 to 21, you'd always say, Red Bull have a chance of winning this championship. It's not just going to be Mercedes. Ferrari also have an opportunity here. And then it never happens. Or if one of them has a chance, it will be Ferrari in 17 and 18, but then otherwise it never happens. So the battle's always between the Mercedes. And everyone always says, like, you know, these other drivers, they'll catch up to Mercedes eventually, and they never did. Now, if what I'm hearing about Mercedes is true, and obviously we've seen that Red Bull and Ferrari are quite close on pace, there could actually be the three-way battle.
It is interesting because Mercedes were talking about how they have almost 3/4 of a second to find in pace.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because they were off by like half a second in qualifying.
They were saying half a second a lap in the race as well.
They were losing almost a second at one point in the race before they changed their tires. But it's interesting. What I found interesting with Mercedes is Lewis got the preferential treatment very obviously, I think, in terms of his pit stops, in terms of George gave him a tow throughout the week. So it'll be interesting to see did Lewis get like the preferential treatment in terms of pit stops and all of that, because he was ahead, because he started ahead. Or
right, yeah.
in terms of qualifying, is it just 1 week like Red Bull used to do a week for like race essentially, like Daniel
I think they did that with Bottas as well.
Yeah,
like 1 week someone gets a toy and the other week the other one.
Yeah,
but in the race, I think what they've done historically is whoever's ahead gets the first stop.
Yeah, right. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is Lewis probably got that, but it's interesting in the sense that in qualifying, is it just George kind of takes a backseat, Lewis is prioritized, or is it more the case random kind of, Lewis will go, you go next week essentially? That would be interesting to see. But what's shocking is Mercedes' pace, I think. We have to comment on that. Because we spoke so much, as soon as I saw it, I was like, we spoke so much about the off-season, about how Mercedes had so much time to develop, how they're going to be so much better, how Red Bull is going to be a midfield team.
Yeah.
And I think that turned out like...
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever predicted something so far off.
Wow, okay then.
Because Red Bull, we said Red Bull's going to be a midfield team.
No, I'd say Mercedes right now is where I thought Red Bull would be.
Exactly, yeah.
So, like, I've actually written down just before qualifying what I thought the order would have been. And I put Ferrari and Mercedes basically where Ferrari and Red Bull are now. Then Red Bull like a little bit behind. I thought Aston Martin would be the best of the rest, which is looking horrific at the moment. Because I thought Aston Martin and Alpine would be like, swapped around. McLaren I thought would go a little bit backwards, but not horrifically. I thought AlphaTauri would go a little bit backwards. Williams would go forward. Alpine would drop horrendously, and then Haas and Alfa Romeo would be at the bottom like they normally are.
Surprisingly, Alfa Romeo are quick.
Yeah, both of them have recovered incredibly. Like maybe that's even because of the regulation change now.
Like Haas is very interesting. Like I was gonna comment on that. It was very interesting. I'm very happy for Haas, obviously.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
finally, like Drive to Survive has to put a Gunther Steiner episode at the beginning next year with Haas finishing P5 after the struggles of fighting.
Definitely.
And a comment on Drive to Survive. Everyone I've spoken to since our episode came out has said the exact same thing we've said essentially, that Season 1 was good, Season 2 was good, Season 3 was alright, this season was bad. Everyone agrees that now is too much.
Sure.
Yeah, but anyways, Alfa Romeo and Haas were very surprising. I thought, to be honest, Williams and Alpine would be at the bottom. I was hoping Williams would kind of jump forward a lot. But surprisingly, they still have the pace to go into Q2 relatively comfortably.
Yeah,
like Albon was P13 and it wasn't like a very big deal for them. So it seems the car has a lot of pace. But we'll see kind of how it goes. Haas was very surprising. I'd say Haas is third in the constructors.
I know, it's insane. Like Schumacher got exposed slightly. I mean, to be fair, he got spun around. He didn't even lose that much time getting spun around on the first lap, to be fair, but like Kevin Magnussen's done an incredible job in that car, and that car must be very solid for him to be up there.
But it's also, do you think, like, it's interesting, is it more like the difference in him and Mick? Mick obviously hasn't raced in kind of the midfield or let's say at front, or raced close to anyone for a long time, so it will take him a bit of time to kind of adjust to that. But it's also the case of experience of knowing where to kind of position your car, how to react on the first lap. Because Magnussen has been in a few kind of scuffles at the
Magnussen, as much as he's like a likable guy now and everyone loves him, pretty much like Hulkenberg.
No one used to like him.
I used to hate him personally as well, because the thing is, he was very much like a Max Verstappen kind of guy, like move around.
Yeah, but he wasn't even that good.
Slightly dangerous. Yeah, he was nowhere near as talented. But
like Verstappen, they kind of accept it because he's good.
I wouldn't accept it from Max either, to be honest. But I just found both of them slightly dangerous drivers. I just didn't like watching them. But I feel like now he's quite likable. He released a book as well, actually. He
has a baby now.
Yeah, so his book is about like his career and stuff, and how basically he's just been messed over by like all of the team principals that he's ever worked under. Like weirdly, it's like the detail he goes into, it's obvious that he was never expecting to be back in Formula One, because some of the stuff he says is quite interesting, to be fair. Like, there's no way you'd be saying that if you were under contract.
But he is back, and I'm happy he's back.
Same,
I'm happy
yeah,
Nikita Mazepin's gone. Everyone's happy Nikita Mazepin's gone.
Yeah.
And he set up a foundation to talk about how... that's too funny, right?
Obviously, like, yeah, you don't want drivers to be... Just because of a certain political situation in someone's country doesn't mean that the driver of the country... Like, just because you're born there doesn't mean you agree with what your government's doing. But ever since that video came out of him in the car on Instagram, no one's liked him, bro. Do you not see that?
No.
This time last year, just before the start of the season, it was posted on either his own Instagram story or his friend's Instagram story of him, like, groping.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
There we go, yeah. I'm not even going to chat too much about that. But, like, ever since that point, his career was in the bin.
Yeah, I think everyone knew at that point. But it is interesting. I don't think everyone hated him as much until it came out that his dad was threatening Günther Steiner on thingy on Webster. I think that kind of ended anyone anyone who liked him. It ended there, and
it
everyone
got
started
from bad to worse.
Yeah.
I mean, if you still liked him after that video, then there's actually something wrong with you. But we'll move on because we don't want to chat too much about Kevin Magnussen. Kevin Magnussen. I meant Nikita Mazepin. Yeah, McLaren.
I think we'll go from the bottom and go up in terms of like performance.
Okay, yeah, we'll have some general stuff. Yeah, okay, yeah. We'll talk about general pace first and then get into like.
I think
what
McLaren
happened.
was shocking. Like, obviously, I was speaking to my friend and he was shocked. He was like, "What's happening?" He's like, "Daniel Ricciardo is going to be the third this year."
I was enjoying myself so much, you know. I was messaging people in the group chat like, "Lando's last." Half of you must be crying right now.
It's very shocking. Like, obviously, I knew about their brake issues and how they couldn't finish a race distance. So obviously, the two cars finishing, that's an achievement in a sense.
I guess, yeah.
But obviously, they haven't had time to work on performance. So it will be interesting to see. The car obviously has the potential. We saw that testing. So now I think once they figure out what the issue is with the brakes, figure that out, solve that, perhaps then they can start to focus on performance and bring in a few upgrades.
Yeah. Interestingly as well, I feel like a lot of people are noticing that the bottom, it might have been 6 drivers.
The bottom 6 all had Mercedes engines.
Yeah. Whether that's finishing positions, we'll check just now. But during the running, we saw the bottom 6. I mean, now obviously the bottom 6 is filled with a couple of retirements, but we've got here the bottom 6 finishers. We've got Mercedes engine, Mercedes engine, Mercedes engine.
All of them have Mercedes.
All the way up to Haas, so all the way up to...
Yeah, but it's interesting, all the Red Bull engines, 3 out of 4 all retired.
Yeah, I mean, there were different issues, but we'll get onto that in a bit once we get nearer the top end. So, yeah, McLaren, awful
Shocking.
from them. I mean, actually, here's a question for you, right? So if everyone's got all of these philosophies now, and they're like, you know, they've done a bit of testing, but they don't really know these cars too well yet. They don't understand how they'll behave at different tracks and all of this. How much will the order change? Do you mean from race to race as people unlock the potential in their cars?
I think it's interesting because you can see in like the different sectors of Bahrain, you can see kind of the quick parts are like mostly dominated by straights, and then there are like I think it's sector 2, sector 3 that has quite a few twisty turns. Quite slow. Yeah, that one a lot of people were gaining time on that, so that would be an interesting thing to see, like a race like Monaco, for instance, or a race that's dominated by kind of the slow corners rather than like the long kind of straights. So think Hungary or something along the lines.
Yeah.
That would be interesting to see how cars react to that. I think cars that were traditionally, like Red Bull was traditionally better on those types of tracks.
Yeah.
Might be a disadvantage from now on. But it's interesting to see because you can start to see like if a track is dominated by that, those cars will obviously have an advantage because of their philosophy.
Yeah. So that kind of track will expose who's better where, I guess.
But realistically speaking, those are very few tracks that are majorly dominated by that. And you can obviously offset it because it's usually at one sector with 2 sectors, kind of you have the long straights and so on.
Yeah.
So you can, that's the thing, you can make up for time in sector 1, sector 3 for instance, and lose a bit of time in sector 2, or vice versa, whatever.
But I'm just thinking if So, you know, we'll leave it. We'll get on to... Actually, no, screw it. We'll do Mercedes now. Basically, the talk about Mercedes is they've got high degradation. They're losing, like, you know, a second per lap or whatever in the race. But once they get the right upgrade, they need to figure out what the problem is first, obviously.
They said they'll figure out the problem. They know what the problem is, yes.
Okay, well, what I've heard is even if they figure out the problem now...
They can't fix it for a few races because
they can't fix it until the start of the European season, which is like a month away.
Yeah, so that's the thing, like, I think what people don't realize is usually the fixes take like a week to do because they're minor issues. Yeah. So usually the issues you have with the car are very small that you can kind of fix it in 1 week.
Like set
but now, yeah, but now the case is a case of everything's new, all the philosophy is new. So if there's an issue, it's a massive issue, and it's the case where it's gonna take a few weeks of research and development to come back with a part that works, and it might not work perfectly first time. There's going to be like a lot of development. It's going to be very rapid development. So I wouldn't be surprised if kind of every few races, every 2-3 races, you see someone come with a significant upgrade.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously I think every race you're going to see someone with an upgrade. It might be a bit small, but every few races you're going to see someone with a very big upgrade trying to kind of fix what the problem is. And I'm very excited for this because by mid-season, you're allocated more time for research. And like wind tunnel testing time and stuff, and it's allocated based on where you finished. And this could be interesting because Haas obviously and Alfa Romeo, they were at the end and they had way more time than everyone else, and they utilized it very well. It's interesting, Williams had a lot of time over a lot of other teams, but they didn't use it as well. Red Bull obviously did not, and Red Bull and Ferrari did very well in that sense. McLaren is just shocking. I'm very sad for McLaren. Like, what do you say? McLaren finished 15th and 14th, and you're like lucky you even finished and you were close to that, you know?
Yeah, I'd say in general, I think so. We've covered most of the main things with the midfield, so we can just go straight to.
We forgot to mention Zhou Guanyu.
Zhou Guanyu,
I don't know how you pronounce it, but he likes to be called Zhou Guanyu, not Guanyu Zhou. But anyways, he got points on his first race. Impressive.
He did, yeah. He got a little bit lucky with the retirements, as did everyone. But it's solid. It's a solid performance because he's not even, well, I say not even that far off. Okay, I mean the timings will be based on the safety car and stuff, but like he's not horrifically off Bottas. Like if Bottas finished 6th, then he finished 10th. It's like, that's a solid for like a first race.
Yeah, I think it's alright in that sense. I think he was quite off the pace in terms of qualifying. He was a bit off the pace in terms of race. But you see that with Mick Schumacher as well. Like, I think it's more the case of you're trying to manage the car. The car is a very different car to drive from F2. First time kind of driving in F1, obviously. So it is very intense. It would be interesting to see how he compares to Yuki. Because Yuki did well on his first race, did a few overtakes, and then disappeared for the rest of the year. So Yuki's back in the points, which is surprising.
True. Solid. I mean, he was being outshone by Gasly until Gasly's retirement, which is what caused the safety car. He had an NGUK issue, which is unrelated to what happened to the Red Bulls, which was actually, like, do you know what happened to them?
I know one of them, Perez, his engine just died.
Yeah, so basically what happened was, they've got an issue with the fuel pump. And it's not the main fuel pump, but it's like a secondary fuel pump where it helps take out the last bit of fuel from the engine.
Okay.
Which explains why it happens right at the end of the race. And the thing is, it's, you know, you can blame Red Bull for this, but some people are blaming Red Bull. You can't blame them because it's a standard part. It comes from an Italian company, it gets given to everyone. So, interestingly, there were issues with this a few days ago. McLaren had to change one because they found like some sort of problem with it, and
so it might be a case of like the company needs to be changed essentially.
Maybe, or they need to change the part. But either way, it sounds like. Well, I mean, obviously they're gonna have to try to deal with it, but like even if they replace the part, or whatever, they could potentially still have the issue.
It might be the case where that part maybe is run down a bit or is in a hotter place of the engine than other engines, so maybe it faces a lot more wear. But that's one thing you have to think about is if the part is on a cooler side of the engine, I don't know where it is, but I'm saying, for instance, if it's on a cooler side of the engine, then it might not wear as much as if it's on a hotter side of the engine. That might be a reason for this. But one thing that they highlighted I find very funny is they were talking throughout the race about how Red Bull poached a lot of Mercedes execs from like the engine part and all of this, and how like the last 6 cars are all like Mercedes and all of this, and then Red Bull retired 3 out of them. I just found it very ironic. Like I'm not like a big Mercedes fan, but I find it ironic that you speak so much about it, and then like 3 out of your 4 cars retire. No Mercedes car like
it was
retired.
so funny. There was a lot of irony in it because there was, after getting P2 in qualifying, Max was interviewed about how he felt about Mercedes being off the pace, and he was like, "Oh, I'm very disappointed," like with a massive smile on his face, and he walks off, and then he basically finishes.
And then Mercedes, the Twitter account, they commented.
Yeah. Mercedes tweeted coincidentally almost exactly around the time that the Red Bulls retired, saying.
I think they posted it before. I don't think they actually posted it after. I'd be surprised.
It was incredible timing. Obviously, they knew exactly what they were doing, and that was great. On top of that as well, Christian Horner and the word karma were both separately trending, but both in the top 3 just after the race. So like, not hashtag Bahrain Grand Prix, not like, anything else. Like, Christian Horner, I'm pretty sure, was number 1 trending on Twitter, and then karma was number 3 trending on Twitter in the UK at the time of the end of the race, which, I mean, it was beautiful scenes, to be honest. I was having a great time. I actually really enjoyed it.
Do you feel bad for George Russell? He waited so long to get in a Mercedes to win, to get a chance to fight, and now Mercedes are happy. Like, Lewis was actually celebrating. Like, he was buzzing to get P3. That is, I think that says everything you need to know about the pace of the car.
Yeah, because clearly he wasn't lying about we're on pace with not on pace with the Alfa Romeos, but like, there or thereabouts, and being, losing a second a lap and not being in the chance to fight for race victories, because at the start of the race he was like right behind Carlos. He had DRS. His tyres degraded, and then that was it. He dropped off.
I think it's interesting, like, you've got the top 4, they're fairly close.
Yeah.
Obviously, during the race, Max and Charles were way closer to each other. And then I think Carlos was he didn't keep up, but I'm not sure if it was the case the team told him not to push to preserve his tires, or
maybe
he couldn't keep up the pace. That would be an interesting thing to see over the next few races. And then Perez was just far behind him. Like Carlos was kind of close. Perez
got finessed by Lewis at the start, and he wasn't involved since.
Yeah, he did overtake Lewis, but then he didn't really get that close to Carlos for a bit.
No, yeah.
And then Mercedes are kind of the case where they can't keep up with the top 4, but they're still well ahead of whoever is behind them. So I've got like the Magnussen and Alfa Romeo after that. But I think that kind of shows you've got top 4, the 2 Mercedes in the middle who are kind of going to stay there because they're not close enough to fight at the beginning or slow enough to fight behind them. And then I think you're going to have 1 or 2 cars that are safe, so Magnussen and Bottas. If they keep performing, I see them probably staying ahead of the midfield. And then everyone else kind of fighting for the rest, essentially.
Yeah. I feel like those 2 that you're mentioning, like the Magnussen and Bottas, will change every race.
Yeah.
But I see that happening, we'll see. I think also worth mentioning as well, Verstappen had another issue completely unrelated with the engine.
Power steering.
It was something to do with his steering. He said that it felt heavy, and then it was worse when he was driving quickly.
Yeah, every time he drove quickly, it was a problem with his power steering.
Just another issue for Red Bull, to be honest. It wasn't looking good.
But that's the thing. These issues are a lot easier to fix, let's say, than like an issue with the philosophy of the car.
True, very
true.
Actually.
They can easily fix something like the power steering. They can easily fix an issue with the engine, like a part like this. Obviously, if they know like it's a cause because of the heating on this side or the car is wearing very quickly and all of that stuff, they can change it, say, every race, or keep monitoring it, like actively monitoring it rather than passively. But they can get a lot easier on top of these issues.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Mercedes, for instance, it's more about the case of they're so far off they can't do anything.
Yeah, the no side pod trick really didn't work for them. But
it's interesting because I like the concept, and it'd be interesting to see if they can actually get their issue. Actually, isn't the no side pod thing. Is they're losing all their time going into the corner. Essentially, what's happening is when they go into the corner, they get a lot of bouncing, and so they can't. The drivers have to go in a lot slower than they normally can, so they lose a lot of time. McLaren has a fairly similar issue in terms of they lose a lot of grip, but it's not the same thing. But, but essentially, they lose a lot of times, both teams, in the corners because McLaren, they don't have a lot of grip in terms of the tires. But the interesting part of Mercedes is the bouncing. So if they can solve the bouncing into the corner, they will gain back that time essentially. I think they're losing some time on the straights.
Yeah, I feel like
But that can be improved. But like if they solve the bouncing issue, there won't be like a second off per lap. But they can kind of get close with strategy and stuff. Because you saw with strategy, Max closed down like I think it was a 6-second gap to nothing. He was on
something like that. Yeah, I was so
Charles's gearbox.
Yeah.
6 seconds. 6 seconds in one lap.